had a very, very good Hanukkah. And I know that we are in very, very difficult times at the moment with the resurgence of the virus. We're thinking of everybody. We do encourage everyone, please take the vaccine if you can and stay safe. Going to the minutes of the meeting held in November, I haven't received any objections or any corrections. Can I take it that the notes of the meeting is approved? Thank you. I will do that. Thank you very, very much. We have at the beginning of the meeting today, Laura Marks. Could I ask you to come on screen? Morning, Laura. You want to talk about Holocaust Memorial Day. So thank you for doing that. If you could come on screen.
Sorry, Laura will be joining in 1 minute. She's just having a problem with her Zoom link.
Well, we've all done very well, I think, with our Zoom links. So hopefully Laura will be with us very, very shortly. And if not, we will go on to the President's statement.
Laura's now joined the Zoom meeting.
Thank you. Are you there, Laura?
Yes, hi.
Hello there. Hi, over to you. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Marie. I'm sorry I had a failure with my Zoom link. So as most of you will know, the 27th of January is Holocaust Memorial Day. And Holocaust Memorial Day is a day set up by government to commemorate the genocides of the Holocaust, Rwanda, Cambodia, Darfur, and Bosnia, and situations ongoing which are likely to lead to genocide. So we have quite a broad remit. And of course, we are founded in and embedded in the Holocaust. And I don't obviously need to talk to you guys about the Holocaust and its importance and its significance and the importance of talking to wider society about the Holocaust and about the dangers of hatred and prejudice and identity-based persecution, which lead to terrible things happening in the future. And to remember what happened in the past so that we can also avoid things happening like that again. And I want to be very brief. So I just want to tell you that there's a few things that we would really like you as deputies to do embedded in your own communities. So the first thing that we would like you to do, if you can, please, is to think about running an event. So the 27th of January is still a month away. I think that obviously within your own communities, and we don't know what's going to be happening by then in terms of what's going to be doable in real life versus online. And it may need to be something online, but it's very easy to set up a small event. As an example, we're going to do one for the Alliance of Jewish Women, which all of the women deputies will be invited to anyway, where we're going to be speaking to a survivor, a woman survivor, and talking about the female side of what happened, or a female perspective on it, if you like. But if you are able to run a small event in your own community, that would be wonderful. And if you need help, there are resources on the Holocaust Memorial Day website, which is hmd.org.uk. So that's the first thing, is to run an event. The second thing is to come to the national ceremony. So in the past, the national ceremony was only open to about 1,000 people, which sounds a lot, but it's tiny, in central London. And as with last year, we are going virtual this year. We're aiming to have a tiny event a week in advance, but the main event will be online, and it will last exactly an hour at 7 o'clock on the 27th of January. And if you register, then you'll be sent all the links in advance. It makes your life much easier than having to scrabble around in advance on the day at 5 to 7. So again, you can register on the front page of the website, hmd.org.uk. We'll send you your own link to come. And then once you've got your link, you can forward that to people in your communities as well. So the second thing to do is to come to the Central London event, which, if it's based on last year, if it's anything as good, will be spectacular. It's got incredible speakers, incredible performers, and as I say, it's just a pleasure that we can open it up to such a broad audience now. And the third thing that we're asking people to do is to light a candle at 8 o'clock in your windows. So last year we launched a thing called a Light the Darkness moment. And across the nation, from Downing Street to Kensington Palace to celebrities to all sorts of people, all around the country, people lit candles and put them in their windows. And at the same time, buildings across the whole country, I think last year there were 52 buildings across the country lit up in purple. And we're hoping to have the same again with all over the country lighting up in purple to remember and to get people to reflect on people who have been murdered for their identity and who continue to be murdered for their identity. So that's the third thing that we're asking you to do, is to light a candle, get your communities to light a candle, 8 o'clock on the 27th. So watch the ceremony at 7 o'clock and light the darkness with us on the same day at 8 o'clock. So 3 asks, please run an event, come to the event and light a candle. And the hashtag is Holocaust Memorial Day 2022 or HMD 2022 or Light the Darkness. Any of those will do. And thank you so much for all being so involved and all already contributing so much to the remembrance of Holocaust Memorial Day.
Thank you very much, Laura. And we want to thank Laura for all of her amazing work. And we do absolutely encourage as many events as possible. And if there's any way that we can try to assist, please do let us know. So thank you for that, Laura. Moving on to the President's statement. We'll take that first before the executive report. At the beginning, can I also say some mazel tovs? Mazel tov to Radlett Reform Synagogue, which has celebrated its 50th anniversary in November, and they had a service and were able to have a party with several of the founding members, and also to Richard Del Monte on the wedding of his son David, and a huge mazel tov to Joel Rosen on his election as president-elect of the Union of Jewish Students. I can see the claps there, and we really look forward to working with you, Joel. Well done indeed. And can we wish refuah shleimas, please, to Jerry Lewis, who is unwell. He's been in hospital in Israel. So he would be very pleased to hear that we're thinking of him today. He may be able to log in. And also, can I say to Elkan Levy, a great friend to the board, he fell over and broke 12 of his ribs. He'd been very, very unwell, but I'm pleased to say that I hear that he's on the mend, and I am in touch with the family. In relation to the issues in the statement, can I just start, please, with something else that's happened? If deputies will look at the Sunday Times this morning, some of you will see there is a piece that's been published on the subject of the plight of Christians in the Holy Land. And this morning we have sent a response in the form of a letter to the Archbishop, which we will publish more widely, and a link will be added when it is published more widely in the chat, and this will allow you all to view our response to the Archbishop. And of course, whilst we deplore any violence against Christians in the Holy Land, which the Archbishop refers to in the piece, we believe that some of the other aspects of the piece are very unhelpful. These include the explanations given as to the decline of the Christian population in the Holy Land, which appears to put the blame on Israelis, the Archbishop calling for action to be taken without specifying what action he wants, and a specific New Testament reference, which I don't think I will go into detail here, but you will find this in our letter of response. and we have asked for a meeting with the Archbishop so that we can discuss our concerns directly. The President's statement is a full document. I just want to take this opportunity to thank the government. Priti Patel, her announcement was really warmly received, and Hamas has now been prescribed in its entirety as a terrorist organization. That is a very, very important step forward. So we're immensely grateful to Priti and to all of the parliamentarians that attended our parliamentary reception. We want to apologise to deputies that we were unable to invite everyone because we had very, very, very stringent limits put on us by the House of Lords. But we hope next year that we'll be able to have much more presence there. We were very fortunate. Priti Patel attended, so did Keir Starmer, Christian Wakeford, the co-chair of the APPG, and we had representatives from the Liberal Democrats and the SNP. Another thing that's been very widely publicised in the last week, of course, is the board's complaint to the BBC and the upset that people felt with innocent teenagers on a bus celebrating Hanukkah, to then find that it had been framed that they were somehow responsible for slurs when they clearly had a very, very traumatic experience. We've put the link to our letter to the BBC in the Google Docs, because I understand that unfortunately they didn't go out with the papers on Friday. But if you would like to see our letter now to the BBC, then you will be able to view that. If you click back onto the link where you got your documents, you will be able to see all of your letters. So I will take questions now on any other matter, and we have got plenty of time at the moment. So I see one hand up so far, two hands up so far. I think Carol was first. Nice to see you again, Carol. Hope you recognise me today.
You're not wearing a hat, Mari, so it's easy. Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate you on the board's recent statements regarding the British government not sending official representative to the Olympic, and also the response to the immigration bill. But can I please ask that when things are broadcast on Twitter, that they also be emailed to all deputies? I don't have a Twitter account. I don't want a Twitter account. And I often don't see these things until they come out in the community briefing, if then. And it puts deputies like me in an invidious position when people might ask them about things that they've seen on Twitter. So it's not a big deal. Just send us a copy of the statement by email.
What I can ask Lauren to do, and that's a very fair point, Carol, because not everybody is on Twitter, is to see if we can send links. I think Lauren Keeler's has got a very good system now of sending documents in a Google folder. So what we'll do is we'll certainly look at what we can do to make sure that deputies do get a different link. I accept it can be difficult, and it will be something that I think we'll be able to solve. So of course, thank you for that, Carol. I think it was Lawrence Julius first, then Denise, and then Vicky, and then Paul. Lawrence, good morning.
Marie, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you on your BBC statement. I thought it was superb and exactly what the community wants and expects, so well done. I was reading Joe Millis's question, and going back to something we discussed with the Constitution, should the board consider publishing its key policies related to external activities in line with sort of best transparency practice under the Charity Governance Code, things like what we do with external publications, things like that. And I'd just like to sort of pose that for a thought. Thank you.
Thank you indeed for your thoughts, Lawrence. And I should have said for housekeeping, so I will do it now. When deputies come online, could they please say who are their what are their constituencies, and just to remind every deputy that they are responsible for their own conduct, whether that's by things that are said in the plenary meeting itself or whether it's online. Thank you. Denise. You're on mute, Denise.
Good morning, Madam President. Good morning, Madam President and deputies. Denise Lester, South Hampstead Synagogue. Madam President, deputies, you may not be aware, but Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, was on the Andrew Marr show this morning on the BBC, expressing concern that Jewish communities are not vaccinated as they should be. I would ask, please, and urge the board to take the lead in reaching out to the entire Jewish community, including in particular the Haredi community, as in Hackney. I can say to you from my professional working life, the Omicron variant is rife. And I would also ask the board to take the lead, including writing to all the liaising with the Haredi leaders, and including issuing a press statement, and also those deputies who are members of the London Jewish Forum to actively engage. If we can save one life and also avoid potential anti-Semitic remarks in our community, where the more mainstream communities, such as myself, are and the synagogal congregation that I represent, are so COVID secure, then we are doing everybody, including the wider community, a service. Thank you.
No, thank you. You're absolutely right. To save one life is to save the world. I think the next order is Vicky Harris, Paul Hart, Brian Bloom, Gillian Mooman, and John Melchior and Shmuel Youssef. If I get the order wrong or miss anyone out, I apologise. Please remind me. So next, Vicky Harris.
Good morning, Vicky Harris, Hampstead Gardens Suburb Synagogue. May I start by saying I support what Carol Abrahams has said, not just because we were at school and college together, but because I believe it's appropriate for all deputies to have early access to all of the publications of the board by way of whether it's a Twitter comment or a press notice. But could I ask you to look at an alternative to Google Drive, because not everybody uses Google Drive and there are restrictions on limits there. So if that could be considered by Lauren when she looks at this, I'd be grateful.
On that, I have been told that, and don't take this time from Vicky, that you don't have to use Google Drive to have access, because that was quite understandably the first question that I asked. Anyone can apparently, I'm told, click on it and it will come straight up, but I will double check.
Thank you. I'm glad the time wasn't taken, because
of course not.
Second point I'd like to raise is I'm obviously quite dim and therefore did not have a clear understanding of the import of your response to Mr. Millis's question about approval and policy making. Could I ask if you would give consideration for a clear plan to gain deputies' formal approval for major board policies? Of course, there are lots of things that go on at the board which cannot possibly have deputy approval for each and everything. But where there are major policies, for example, in Defence Division at the moment, we're working very well on a manifesto for the board's manifesto for the local government elections. That's major policy and hopefully will come before deputies for its approval. But I'd be grateful to know what proposals there are if there isn't at the moment a clear policy on when deputies will have access to a formal vote in plenary on major policy matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your feedback, Vicky. I think the reply in the President's statement was extensive and it's clear, and policy just doesn't come from one direction. I understand the direction of travel, that deputies absolutely want to be consulted, deputies want to be listened to, deputies want to have more time to talk. So we've limited having public speakers, but we can't have everything by vote. If that's what is intended, we won't be able to operate, and we have such diverse views. Policy comes from all different ways, as set out in the answer. But we're very happy to have debates. We discussed this a couple of months ago. Nobody's actually put forward anything yet. If people want to, we're really open. To doing that. So we will do all that we can, and thank you for that. I think the next person was Paul. Did I say it was you, Paul? Paul Hart.
Sorry. Paul Hart, Mosaic Liberal Senegal. Has there been any response at all from the BBC?
Thank you for your question. There has been a response from the BBC, and when I've got more to be able to report back, I will report back to deputies. The headline point is that the Director General of the BBC will agree to a meeting with me. So we've got correspondence which is currently ongoing. So this will be ready for publication, an update during the week, and we will let you know probably Tuesday or Wednesday. But that's a very good question, and we're certainly not going to leave it there. Thank you. And just to remind everyone, you can either have a question or a statement. Thank you. Brian Bloom.
Good morning. Brian Bloom, AJAX, Jewish Military Association UK. Madam President, Marie, fellow deputies, on behalf of AJAX and all of our veterans, their families and dependents, may I thank you all, the board especially, for your wonderful support at this year's AJAX annual remembrance parade and commemoration at the Cenotaph, especially those of you that marched. It is humbling to see how many of our synagogues held an AJAX Remembrance Shabbat this year. It is incredible to know that so many of our communities all over the country laid a Mogen David wreath at their local cenotaphs. In this way, it is flags up to the rest of the population, the wider community, the service that we as Jews have done for this, our country, our home, for 250 years, since 1745, in fact, and we still do so today. So a huge thank you to you all, from all of us that have served and continue to serve in Her Majesty's Armed Forces. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Gillian, good morning to you.
Good morning, Madam President. Thank you.
Good morning.
Gillian Moonman, Southport Hebrew Congregation. It's not often that I find myself in agreement with Joe Millis, but on the issue of proper debates and votes in plenaries, I think Joe is absolutely right. And unless there's a matter of great urgency, in which case the board has to act immediately, then I really feel that there should be proper debate and votes. And the proposed Holocaust Memorial in Westminster Gardens is a prime example, and there are others. Deputies possess an enormous amount of wealth and talent, and these qualities must be allowed to enhance the conversations that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gillian. I think we have had quite a big discussion on the Holocaust Memorial, and the submission in the manifesto was drafted a long time ago, and I think Laura Marks did a huge amount of work, for which I want to thank her on that. I think there are some things that are not right to politicise. I don't think the Holocaust Memorial should be politicised. But again, we encourage motions, we encourage debates, and absolutely bring on motions, bring on debates. Let us know, and that's all very, very welcome. Thank you. John, I think you're next.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and I put it back up. I was very happy to hear about the AJAX statement, and also the BBC statement was very welcome. As you know, I asked a question in advance about this, the congratulatory note to the government about not voting for a statement from the UN that said that Jerusalem had nothing to do with Jews. And I read your response, and I thank you for that. And I understand that there was some work in advance of that whole vote that caused you to be happier that they didn't actually vote for the statement, but decided still that they couldn't vote against it. And I have to say that in my opinion, this is too much of a congratulation. First of all, people that saw the statement did not realize what you had done in advance, and that you had worked with them and the Germans not to support the statement, but to actually not come out strongly and say that Jerusalem is indeed also Jewish is not something that you deserve a congratulate note for. And if you wanted to do that, maybe behind the scenes, thank them. But when you do it publicly and say, we're actually quite satisfied that the government doesn't say that Jerusalem isn't Jewish, I can't support that. You know, also the government has supported so many other statements in the UN that are anti-Israel, even this year. You know, it goes below the radar because nobody really pays much attention to the UN and their General Assembly statements, because they do the same every year. And we know how the majority of nations will support these anti-Israel statements. But we would expect better from our government, and I would certainly expect better if they should be congratulated to vote as they do. They vote against Israel on more occasions than they vote for Israel, and they do not deserve our congratulations in this way. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with a lot of what you say, and the board's work, I think, should, I have to say, I agree with you, have been explained and the context put. So when David Mendoza-Wolfson comes to giving his report, I'm sure he will want to give more of an explanation as to why it was felt that it was so important. But I understand what you're saying, and I want to thank you for your contribution. Thank you. Shmuel, and remember names and constituencies, please. And then Andrew Gilbert. Good morning.
Hi, Shmuel Yosef Davidson. I'm from South Tottenham and also the Haredi community. In response to earlier on, a colleague spoke about the Haredi community and vaccines and what's going on. Can I just put a few records straight? The Haredi community was the first of the last Jewish community to do a massive vaccine rollout going back last year in the winter. We even had the vaccine minister come to visit one of them. We had Sadiq Khan come to visit another one of them. We are in process of continuing that with Hatzalah, our phenomenal service, which I think we're most proud of as a Haredi community to have such a service, continues to offer vaccine rollouts. We advertise every week, and there's a major drive and push within the Haredi community to get the vaccine rolled out. I understand from my work with Hatzalah that we're about to announce some major more runs, which the community trusts and are waiting for this vaccine rollout. So there is a very big push for it, and there's a very big push for the Haredi community to get the vaccine. And the anti, which people talk about, is very minimal and sometimes not even heard. So and we do work with the London Jewish Forum with Andrew and colleagues who are very supportive of us as well. And there is a lot going on behind the scenes, and not always is it publicized because the Haredi community is not the best in doing that. But I want to reassure colleagues that we are working endlessly with the health service, using Hatzalah trained volunteers as vaccinators, and the community are responding to that. And we are now about to launch another big vaccine rollout to combat again what is going on, and continue to try and keep the community safe and healthy going forward, so we can all continue our lives normally. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for all your work, Shmuel. Jerry, how nice to see you or hear from you this morning. I hope you're feeling a bit better. You're next. Can you unmute, please?
Yes, I'm unmuted. Jerry Lewis, Hampstead Synagogue. Thank you for your refuah shalema. Deputies, please forgive me for not appearing on screen, but I'm not a pretty sight anymore, having had 15 or 16 stitches in my head when I had a row with a building when I tripped over the other couple of days ago. I'm doing a tour of Israeli hospitals, having been in Sharat Tzedek one night and just Friday night in Rambam. Not a pleasant sight. You mentioned the Sunday Times. I haven't seen the article. It's not on the pages I can see on my screen. However, I wanted to just elevate the issue that you've raised over the treatment by Israel of Christians. You may not be aware, but I am aware from here of a very tragic situation in that Shaked, the minister, who has various responsibilities in this government, decided to impose a ban on everybody coming to this country except, and this is the interesting thing, those from birthright. And the Christians have made a major cry, a big complaint, justified in my view, that is blatant discrimination against Christians who want to come to Israel for Christmas. Why this was done, how it was done, and for what purpose, I have no idea. But she discriminated in favor just of Jews being able to come to Israel. And I think that is morally wrong. I don't think that enough protest has been made around the world. And I have to support the Archbishop of Canterbury if he makes any protest about that, because that, I feel, is a disgraceful form of discrimination. It's also reflected very badly because the Palestinians and Arabs who wanted to celebrate Christmas as well, both in Nazareth, in Jerusalem and Bethlehem, are now denied the rights of anybody else coming here. Yes, the regulations are very tight for tourists coming to Israel, and I was lucky to get in before they closed the barrier. But it's wrong for Israel to allow birthright citizens, birthright members to come in on those circumstances. Finally, can I just say congratulations on your stance with the BBC. Entirely right. You're playing a blinder yet again. Thank you very much. And thanks for those people who sent me messages for Refuah Shalema. Theoretically, I'm due back on Thursday. My flight's already been cancelled. Who knows what? Bye.
We wish you Refuah Shalema and a Nazia Tova. Can I just respond? I am told, and you have been unwell, so maybe you may not be quite up to date, that UK birthright trips are cancelled for December. I don't know when that happened. And just to confirm that the Archbishop's article did not address this issue. And thank you for those very important points and what you had to say about the letter to the BBC. Andrew Gilbert, who appears to be the last person today.
Hi, good morning, President. Andrew Gilbert, Reform Judaism. I wanted just to comment on what Denise Lester said about the Haredi community, and also following up on Shmuel Yosef Davidson. There is a definite push by lots of organisations within the Haredi community to take up vaccinations and offer vaccinations. There are lots of people within the Health Security Agency and the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities who are trying also to work with local GPs, and London Jewish Forum been working with those and with promoting both in the Haringey and Hackney community. However, the figure in Stamford Hill is still massively low, about a third to a half of figures elsewhere. So it is a huge job, and everything that Denise said was true, everything that Shmuel said was true. We're not questioning any of that, and everything that the mayor said is also true. And we've got it's an uphill task. It's not denial. It's a community of young people, and if you look as well across London, young people in the numbers are also the last group, and feel perhaps it's less necessary for them. And the Haredi community is like 5 times more young people than the rest of our community. So the disparity is also to be seen in that way. So there's lots of different things going on there, lots of people focused on it. And Denise, I pray with you that they and much more that we actually do see take up and success on that. In terms of the BBC, I credit all the work the board's done, but we mustn't lose sight of the fact that we must be chasing the police for what happened to the perpetrators on Oxford Street, and we mustn't just focus on the BBC. It's a deflection. It's typical of the CAA that all they're interested in is making publicity of that nature, but the board has got to focus on the incident itself and not rather than and the BBC, however important, is just another product on the way. We must be focused and maintain absolute focus on the incident itself. Thank you very much. Indeed, wishing you well.
Oh, thank you. We do have sufficient time for Gillian to do a second question, because we usually encourage people who haven't spoken, but as we're in time today. Gillian.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak again. Gillian Moonman, Southport Hebrew Congregation. I was speaking to Lubavitch Robertson last week, and she was absolutely torn on this issue, but she's very worried that there is a problem, or could be a problem, with fertility from the vaccination, and hence she's chosen not to have 4 of her daughters vaccinated. Now, whether this is a myth, whether there's some scientific evidence behind this, we probably don't know at all. But I think that is a very important issue. And if you imagine all the young girls not being vaccinated, then that accounts for a very large number of people who are not protected and who are not protecting the rest of the population.
Thank you, Gillian. I personally have understood that is a myth. There are many myths around this, but the science and guidance from the government that's been given clearly is that as many people as possible should have the vaccine, and there is a huge task force out there who are trying to keep the people safe. I can only go by government advice, but thank you for what you said, Gillian. Thank you very much. Is there any other questions on the President's statement? Okay, thank you very much. Any questions on the executive report? Okay, thank you very much. This is going to be a first. We are ahead of time, so thank you for that. We will now go on to the divisional reports. Each HO is going to have 15 minutes for their report and questions and answers. And first today will be Gary. So over to you, Gary.
Thank you very much, Marie. You've got my statement. I've tried wherever possible to refer to where deputies have done things and credited them for their efforts. I don't have a great deal to add because it is only 4 weeks since my last statement. We're doing our best to maximise the number of Jewish representatives on SACRAs, and we have arranged a conference for the 3rd of February, which I hope as many of you as possible will come to, on the issue of SACRAs, and we've got a leading speaker. We're also going to be looking at what our strategy is with regards to boosting the teaching of Jewish issues in non-Jewish schools. On the second section on Israel education, we've now had 7 of these Zoom seminars, of which I'm getting something between 30 and 45 deputies attending, which is quite good, but I would like to see more. Just for information, the next 3 seminars early in 2022, first will be on the British Mandate. Secondly, will be on the 1948 War of Independence. And thirdly, will be a considered discussion about Israel in 1950 and what sort of state the Israelis wanted to see going forward at that point in time. I'm also looking for deputies to actually do some presentations. I won't name the deputies now, but I'm pleased to say that 4 or 5 deputies have agreed going forward in 2022 and 2023 to actually be the presenters, which is great. In the third section on Holocaust education, we're going to be addressed either at the January or February plenary to decide by Laurie Rosenberg from Yad Vashem UK about the scheme to twin bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah boys and girls with those who tragically never had a bar and bat mitzvah because of the Holocaust. And that's something that's a project we certainly want to take forward. Also, it's been great with working on the community side, and I particularly commend the points I made about the setting up of the Hertfordshire Jewish Forum. And also, I would say that I'm going to be chairing a session at Limud on the issue of Jewish communities outside the M25, and put the date and time in your diaries. It's the 28th of December, Tuesday at 2 p.m. And several of the guest speakers will be prominent people from the board. So I hope as many of you as possible will attend that. Going forward, in section 7 on health and mental health, later in this plenary, we're going to be addressed by Adam Dawson. And it's to do with Jamie Shabbat, which is on the 7th to the 8th of January this year, so it's quite early. And Adam will be talking about the things that deputies can do to boost Jamie Shabbat. We were very successful, moving on now to the last point, with regard to Jewish Women's Aid. In November, we launched a great video of deputies supporting Jewish Women's Aid. And we're going to be meeting with Jewish Women's Aid, all being well early in the new year, to see what else we can do for them. So can I just say thank you all very much. And what questions are there? I see Joe Millis. Joe, your hand is up. You're the first. And then Richard Sassoon. Joe. I can't hear you, Joe. You're on mute.
Yeah, I know. It's anyway, Joe Millis, Bromley Reformed Synagogue. A bit tangential, but do you agree with Shmuel Hayek's view that British Jewish leadership is weak and there's no room left for no future for British Jews, for Jews in Britain, as he said in an interview with the Jerusalem Post? And if you do, what are you going to do about it? And if you don't, why are you still JNF representative?
Interesting question. I've got several points to make on this, actually. First, Samuel Hayek has been an outstanding chairman of JNF UK, and I have been and I remain honoured to serve as a trustee of JNF UK under his leadership for the past 10.5 years. He has been a real force in the UK in standing up for Israel, and I respect his approach in not being frightened to speak his mind. Second, Samuel writes in a personal capacity. I wasn't consulted on the article's content, nor did I need to be. Third, it's my job as Senior Vice President and Chair of Communities and Education to do my absolute best to help ensure that the British community does indeed have a golden future in this country, and everything I do in this role is ultimately aimed at achieving that goal, just as I'm sure the under officers have the same attitude to their business. And finally, I think a bit disappointed at the sort of confrontational nature of this question. I think Samuel's made his points in a well-written article, and if you or anyone else disagree with them, please write your own article in opposition, arguing the points one by one. Indeed, for me, one of the huge problems within our community is that there is too much of simply angrily dismissing others as having views beyond the pale, and too little polite but robust discussion. And that trend, tragically, sometimes leads to cancel culture, which I personally regard as pernicious. Richard Sassoon. Richard, you're on mute, I think. I can't.
No, I've just come off mute. Richard Sassoon, S&P Sephardi Community. Gary, I fear that you do yourself a disservice. And in that I wanted to comment on the Israel education program that you've got that's aimed primarily at deputies. I think that the lectures so far have been absolutely wonderful. Both Michael Rieger and Nuki have been excellent presenters, and I'd like to commend the series to all deputies. I think it's a shame that only 30 or 40 deputies have been participating. And what I'd like to ask you to do is to publish Zoom links to previous lectures, and to recommend and encourage all deputies to participate, because I think it's an absolutely wonderful series and will form an excellent resource for deputies in the future. Thank you very much, Gary.
Thank you very much, Richard, and I'll liaise with Michael Eager concerning that. Thank you. Next one I've got up is Family Gordon. I don't know who Family Gordon is, but could Family Gordon identify himself?
My name's Simon Gordon. I'm a deputy from Radlett Reformed Synagogue. I would agree with the comments about the Israel history. I've seen all of them. And by the way, whenever you get the next one, there is a YouTube for the previous one. So anybody who wants to actually watch them can actually go back and watch them, the previous ones. They're all on YouTube. Just wanted to comment about this new idea of twinning a bar or bat mitzvah with someone from the Holocaust. Radlic Reform has been doing that for a long time. And whenever we have a bar mitzvah, part of the history of whoever that person that died in the Holocaust is read out by the bar mitzvah boy. And I would urge other communities to do the same. And the other thing that they can do, which is link them to the Czech scrolls, which a larger number of synagogues have got, which they have in their communities as a result, which were found after the war and brought to Westminster. Radlett is more or less unique in having two, and I regard myself as the custodian of one of them. But most synagogues have a Czech scroll. A lot of them have had them for many years and probably forgot they've got them. But I'd urge them to do both. That's, I think, a way of linking the past to the present. Thank you.
Simon, thank you very much. I'm not for one moment claiming that the idea of the linking of bar and bat mitzvah boys and girls to Holocaust victims is new. It certainly is not new. It's just that Laurie Rosenberg has been recruited only quite recently by Yad Vashem to essentially kickstart it, to give it a greater prominence, and the board wants to help. And that's why Laurie will be addressing us to see what we can do. Essentially, it's to boost the programme. I'm not saying the programme doesn't exist. I know it most certainly does exist. And there have been many hundreds of children who have had bar and bat mitzvahs in that way. I'm simply saying that the board wants to help to get this to be more prominent. It's all part of Holocaust education. Thank you. Jeffrey Gaffson. Sorry, Jeffrey, you're on mute. Jeffrey, you're on mute, Jeffrey.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can, Jeffrey.
Okay, Jeffrey Gaffson, Mill Hill United Synagogue. Gary, the most recent figures published by Ofsted show independent Jewish schools are 3 times more to be rated require improvement or inadequate than other independent schools. 63% of Jewish independent schools are less than good, with 33% inadequate, while for all independent schools, the comparison figures are 23% and 10% respectively. This is quite a worrying statistic, Gary. Can you comment, please, on that?
Yes, I can. I would certainly agree it's a worrying statistic. The main body within the Jewish community that tends to take responsibility for liaising with and working with Jewish schools on this issue is Pages, which is, and I'm regularly in contact with Rabbi David Mayer, who is the head of Pages on these issues. It's certainly something that that needs to be addressed, and not just addressed across the board, both in the secular studies within the Jewish schools as well as in religious studies. But it is primarily Pages that takes responsibility on Jewish schools within our community rather than the board. Okay, Robert Stone. Robert, you're on mute, Robert.
Sorry, Robert Stone. By the way, for the information of the managers, we all start on mute because it's very unclear when we're getting on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right, I'm going to make myself very unpopular. So let me begin by saying that I am a strong Zionist. I wholly support the state of Israel as much as I despise the previous government. So let me say that before I start. On Monday, we consulted, on behalf of the deputies, I consulted the Synagogue Council about why our community contribution is relatively low. I mean, it's average, but that means it's not high enough. And we're going to run a campaign this year to try and increase the community contribution. But we asked the council members, we showed the video, I talked about what the board did, and we asked what their response was. And there was quite a strong consensus that the board seems to be totally obsessed with Israel. We have, they loved what the president did on the attacks on those Jews in Oxford Street and so on. They support what the board does, but they think the board pays far too much attention to Israel. We have a community, they noted that the community and education division, not the international division, is running courses on Israel, and that your presentation was about half about Israel, and so far a third of the questions have been about Israel. And my community believes that the board does wonderful work in the UK, and we should be paying far more attention to that. And the fact that only 30 or 40 deputies turned up to Israel education, even though it was magnificent, tells us that we're not the only community who thinks that we should be focusing more on British Jews, and while supporting Israel wholly, be less obsessive about it.
Robert, thank you very much for that question. I regard it as partly for me and probably partly for the President and the other honorary officers as well. So I'll deal with the bit that's for me, which is Israel education. The name of my division is Communities and Education, and education includes education which can be for deputies and is in a variety of areas. So I agree with the President at the time I was offered this position back in May, that Israel education would form a part of my division's activities, and so it has. As for other aspects of your question, I'm not really sure they're for me. They're more probably for David and probably the President as well. Next on the list is George White. George.
Gary, coming back to the article in the Jerusalem Post, I've really got two questions. Question one is, what does the author believe ought to be done about it? It's all very well to say this isn't good. I'd like for you to ask him what does he think he ought to do about it. The second question is that you could say the article wasn't balanced, it was unfair, but there is some truth in it. And from what you were saying before about people need to work together, well, I'd like to be able to see how visibly the board works together. And for example, why can't you invite the presidents of some of the other organizations and find out what makes them tick? Why is it they think they need to do what they need to do? For example, the president or the chairman of the Jewish Leaders Council. In other words, I do have some sympathy to that article because I do know and believe that lots of different presidents and chairmen believe they know best what to do and what they should do. So coming back to summary, the question is, what does he recommend we do about it? And secondly, let's have some visibility as to how the board works with other organizations. Let's invite the president or chairman, the new one of the Jewish Leadership Council when he's appointed. Let's see what he has to say for himself.
Can I just respond, Gary, slightly, because I am, of course, a trustee of the Jewish Leadership Council. Just to say, I'm totally aligned with the view of the Jewish Leadership Council that the UK is an absolutely great place to live. We've absolutely got our challenges and our issues, but we're very, very fortunate. We do have a great organisation, whatever you think of it, George. We are the envy of many faith communities and communities around the world for the way that we represent ourselves. And we do have to obviously deal with some very serious issues, but this is a great place to live and to be Jewish, and that certainly will be the view of the Jewish Leadership Council as well. So sorry to interrupt. I think, Gary, we might be running a bit late. You should have probably only taken the questions that you've got.
Marie, I'm not criticising anybody. What I'm saying is we ought to improve, we ought to continue to improve what we're trying to do, and let's show how we are improving rather than saying there's something wrong with it. I'm talking about improvement and doing things better as opposed to being critical about it. So coming back to the author, what does he suggest we do about it? What are his recommendations?
I would simply add, that's not a question for me. That's a question for Samuel Hayek. You should write to him directly. We'll move on now to David Sapir.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you for your very comprehensive report. I congratulate you on the effectiveness, which is already demonstrated, of having set up a number of working groups. With reference to point 4, where you're talking about communities, I just had 3 questions which you may be able to answer, or failing that to take offline. In item 4, you refer to meetings with marginal or oppositions in marginal councils, and you refer to Barnet and Harrow and Enfield. Fortunately, I think from a political point of view, they are not the same party in all three, as you well know, because otherwise it might look as if we're only interested in talking to the party that we think is a problem. But there are two other things that I'd be interested in. One is, if you have future seminars, such as the one you held in Hertfordshire, could you perhaps consider having them in areas, in council areas where there isn't such a large Jewish population, because frankly, matters that take place in councils in one part of the country can affect Jews in other parts of the country, if you know what I mean. And the third point is very simply that when you do have such meetings, whether seminars or meetings, can you give us some idea of the issues that are raised? For example, IHRA recognition or whatever. What are the key issues which are being discussed with these councillors? Thank you very much indeed.
And David, I would like to take this offline. I particularly want to liaise with my colleague Andrew Gilbert, who is and Adrian Cohen, who are the co-chairs of London Jewish Forum, on this. You raise good points, and we will come back to you. Jeremy Michelson.
Thank you, Gary. Really, just to answer the point that was made about Haredi schools, I know this is really more of an issue for the pages and the JLC. Whereas obviously there are some schools that really do fall badly below standards. There are many others who are doing very well, but who are marked down because they don't always deal with the, as far as Ofsted are concerned, with some of the protected characteristics, and particularly obviously with sexual orientation, etc. And sometimes Ofsted inspectors are guilty of gross cultural insensitivity. In one case, where you get kids who really don't use the internet and therefore are not aware of what's going on. One school was asked, do you know anybody who's come out? And the answer, of course, came back, well, from where? So I think that while obviously we do need to encourage the schools to get up to standard, I think we have to be aware of where Ofsted are coming from in some cases.
Jeremy, thank you very much. I'm going to liaise on that with David Mayer, Rabbi David Mayer, and we'll come back to you in the next week or two, probably very early in the new year. Two more questions. Amos Schonfield, then Flora Franklin, and that will be all we have time for. Amos.
Thank you, Gary. Amos Schonfield, Deputy for Masorti Judaism. It's been 2 months since the murder of the MP David Amos, the second of such horrific murders in recent years. In October, at the time, you apologised publicly to Angela Rayner for what you called clumsy and inappropriate language when you commented on something over Shabbat on a Facebook post. I'm just interested in the following up on that apology. Have you heard from Angela Rayner's office? Is the matter now settled? I think it's really important to make sure that the board's reputation is secure in this.
I haven't actually heard from Angela Rayner's office. The only thing I have heard was Angela Rayner publicly apologising for her own earlier statement. But no, I've not actually had any further comment on the matter. That's really all I have to say on it, I guess. Flora. You're on mute, Flora.
Easy to unmute. Are you there?
I'm here.
I'm trying to unmute. Yes, I have. Thank you. Good morning, first of all. And I do wish Jerry a refuah shelema, if I may use these columns. British Emunah, Flora Frank. It's not so much a question as trying to respond to something to previous speakers. Too much focus on Israel and the Israel education program. I think as Jews, whatever shade of orthodoxy we are, and we're all in it together, we're all Jews, Israel is crucial to us. And it's crucial, if I may use that word again, to know a little bit about the background and the politics and the culture and all these amazing things that are covered, and give us a better understanding as Jews about why we are here and what is going on in Israel. It gives an amazing, and I know people have already, deputies have already admirably praised this program. And may I just say the numbers 30 to 40, they're not bad numbers, as Gary has pointed out, but I believe that one of the reasons is that because either there's, you know, we haven't got the time, there's a lot of Zoom going on, which is a good reason for it. And I have had, I mean, when I've tried to encourage people to come, that has been their response, and I respect that. But it's also due sometimes to people being lazy, if I may put it in that way, and forgive me, or, you know, can't be bothered, whatever the word is, forgetfulness. So I for one, think it's a most brilliant program. It's the best we've had. And I missed it last week, and I was actually almost in tears. It was, I won't go into it. That's how much, and I'm a very busy person. It is wonderful. Yotzemina Club, as they say in Ivrit, it's just extraordinary. And I think it's very important. And we mustn't lose sight that we are Jews and Israel is our raison d'etre. Thank you.
Thank you, Flora. I can just wholeheartedly agree with you. Before handing over to Amanda Bowman, my final comment, just to make, I'm absolutely delighted that there were so many questions today. You may remember at the November plenary, I didn't have a single question, and I felt very left out in the cold. You
Thank you.
feel so much better today.
Oh, Gary, we're pleased that you feel so much better. Could I just apologise before we move on to Amanda, because I didn't answer Lawrence Julius's question, so I just want to apologise. And just to say that we are actively working on the board plan, and I hope that this is going to be able to be published to deputies very shortly. Could I also update deputies, if you go onto the chat, you will now be able to see and read the letter that we have written to the Archbishop of Canterbury. So you'll be able to see that there. And when we had to look at the divisions after the recent elections, I did introduce for the first time Israel Education for Deputies. And I do think it's very important because it's a way that everybody from across the community, you know, that we represent the full diversity and spectrum of the community, has a way to come together. And education is something that is really important. We also have Michael Weeger's expertise, and I think we should take full advantage of that. And so many people are coming to these sessions that I think it's very important that we carry on, and we can see by the demand that this is something that's very important. So you can all have your say, but we hope you continue to enjoy them. So thank you everyone for your work. Amanda.
Thanks, Marie. Good morning, deputies. I just wanted to first of all start off my report by congratulating Daniel Sugarman for his appointment as Director of Public Affairs. It means, as far as the division is concerned, that we lose Daniel on a day-to-day basis, but we still obviously have his support more generally in his new position. It also means that we're in the process of recruiting a replacement for Daniel, a new Public Affairs officer to support the division, and we're also recruiting an interfaith assistant to work with us in the division, in particular to focus on deputy and community engagement on interfaith affairs, which, given some of the discussions we've had this morning, I think is going to be really important over the next years. So I just wanted to open with that, then to make the point, as Gary has already made, that one of the ways that we're working in the division is through a series of working groups to take forward the work that we discuss and where deputies scrutinise and advise on the work of the division at meetings, but to take forward that work in small groups between meetings. And over the last month, we have had meetings of the local government and devolved administrations working group on higher education and on interfaith. On the local government and devolved administrations work, as has already been mentioned, the focus of that work up till now, with thanks to James Harris and Nathan Baroda, who are leading that group, with the work of Daniel Elton from the professional team and all the people on that working group. That work is focusing on our work up to the local government elections that are taking place in spring of next year. And I would estimate at this point that probably about 40% of deputies have already had a chance to input on the content of that, and a second draft has now come to the honorary officers for their input. More information will be sent around on that in due course. I also want to talk a little bit about the work that we've been exploring, and we've been having meetings around anti-Semitism in the cultural industries. There's been a lot of emphasis over the last few years around anti-Semitism in sport, but we've also seen an increase of anti-Semitism in other cultural settings, and that's something that the division have been looking at and will look at in more detail in the future. And because of the broad interest around defence and interfaith relations across the Board of Deputies, we have, as I reported in the last meeting, had 2 open meetings. We had one meeting on anti-Semitism and another open meeting on the assisted dying bill that's going through government at the moment. We are looking at a series of events on a more regular basis, a series of open meetings, so that deputies from outside of the division can come along, share their insights, and be more involved in the board's approach to some of these issues. I'm going to pause at this point and open up for questions. Okay, Karen, I can see that you've got your hand up.
Good morning, Deputies. Karen Maxwell from Liberal Jewish Synagogue. Amanda, just picking up on the interfaith piece, you're probably not surprised to hear. You'll have seen I asked a question that Marie very kindly answered in her board report about the incident in Oxford Street. And I actually have to say I really agree with what Andrew said earlier today about the issue with the BBC reporting. I think is a sort of, really critical, but is a kind of distracting us from the key issue. I realise that the Jewish-Muslim issue is not the only dynamic within interfaith. Interfaith covers a much broader issue. And I know there's lots of stuff going on, but I really do feel that we need to kind of raise the game on this. I think the particular issues and sensitivities may be more political ones in a way in that dynamic. And I know from talking to a number of Muslim friends that they were appalled by what happened in Oxford Street. So I do feel there is a sort of it's a good time to try and engage together with the Muslim community, because anti-Semitism and Islamophobia kind of affect the communities, both communities in the sort of, very, very similarly. I think there's a lot of understanding and shared issues there. So I would really encourage us to try and do something. So I guess I know it's early days and I know you've just had your first meeting, but I'd really love to hear sort of your thoughts and, intentions kind of in that area going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I think and absolutely yes. Yes. There's nothing you said that I disagree with, as you would expect, because we've had these conversations before. We had our first working group meeting a few weeks ago, and we will have we will come back together in the new year. At which point we will set a date for opening this up more widely. There is a huge wealth of experience amongst deputies for interfaith engagement, and many more who would like to be more involved or whose communities are more involved. And so sharing of good practice across communities and with a new interfaith assistant being able to support individual deputies on engaging is going to be really important. And I completely agree with everything you're saying. And yes, early in the new year, expect a call. Thank you. Tessa.
Hello, Tessa.
Hi.
Yahad. I know that the board came out against the Nationality and Borders Bill, which is going through the Houses of Parliament and is currently in the House of Lords, and that this is effectively an anti-refugee bill, which would criminalise those who help refugees. At the same time, the government is narrowing safe asylum routes. For example, for those coming from Afghanistan, they shut down the asylum programme for refugees from Syria. And it has since emerged that as part of this bill, the government intends to dramatically increase powers to be able to revoke citizenship without notice. And I'm sure that this rings alarm bells for deputies here. So I'd really appreciate an update on the board's campaign on this bill and surrounding issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Tessa. So you refer to the board statement, and you'll also be aware, because it says in the statement, that we've requested a meeting with a Home Office minister to discuss that, and we're still in the process of trying to arrange such a meeting. The main action in terms of campaigning is held with the Social Justice Committee, and Marie leads on our work on the Social Justice Committee. And so it may be that Amos would, or Talia, if she's in the meeting, would like to respond on that. But you've seen from the statement that we made that this is something that we feel is really important, and it's something that we need to stand up for. Joe and Denise, I can see you've got questions, but I'm going to go to Nathan first, because Nathan hasn't spoken yet at this meeting.
Thanks very much, Amanda. Many deputies would have seen on social media last night that Piers Corbyn has been issuing threats against MPs. Shameful acts. I wondered if the board would condemn this, and sort of his supporters across the country for engaging in these disgraceful acts.
Nathan, I have to say that I haven't seen Piers Morgan's tweets, and so I can't comment on them directly, but I will absolutely look into them, and we'll come back to you. So I have 3 people who have already asked questions. Amos, were you going to respond to Tessa's point? So I'm going to ask Amos to respond first, and then I'll come back to Joe and Denise.
Thank you, Amos. Sean Field, Deputy from Assaulted Judaism, and alongside Talia Chain, I co-chair the Social Justice Committee. I do share the concerns of other deputies that since issuing a statement in August, the board was inactive on this issue. The Social Justice Committee is in the business of trying to re-establish itself, and there is, there was little support that we had to make the requisite amount of noise to push on the issue of the asylum of the Nationality and Borders Bill. So I do hope that we can continue and sort of get to work now. The bill will most likely pass. We do need to, if anyone wishes to get to work on making sure that we can eradicate the worst parts of the bill, please do reach out to members of the House of Lords. They have the power to amend this bill and to make a right old stink about it. Just with the time I had left, I wanted to emphasise that even though whilst the bill may well pass and will pass with criminalising people for seeking sanctuary in this country, criminalising the most vulnerable among us, and do nothing will only empower people smugglers and human traffickers, people who are making money off of human misery, are celebrating at the work of Priti Patel, celebrating quite like we've heard today, the fawning praise toward her. We are seeing people being moved back into barrack accommodation, being detained in military barracks instead of being housed like human beings, people being moved and people being abandoned in hotels, especially right now at Christmas time. So I do urge people to find out what they can do in their local communities. We saw a lot of fantastic action in August at the height of the Afghan crisis. And if people have the capacity and the empathy to do so again, we should really be reaching out and working hard. So thank you, Tessa, for bringing that up. And thank you, Amanda, for the opportunity.
Amos, I just want to come back. Thank you for sharing what the Social Justice Committee are going to do. I just need to come back and say that it's not that we're doing nothing, and it's not that we're being fawning. The Board of Deputies are working with the Home Office on several different issues. There are some things that we push back on, and some things that we encourage, and at every meeting that we've had where it's been possible, we have brought up the issue between August and now. So where we're having meetings with ministers or with MPs, it's an issue that comes up as part of the conversation, because the issue is the whole issue of this is in our manifesto, and therefore one of the key policy asks. And so it's there, and it's a normal part of the way we do business, but absolutely we should be engaging with government and with the House of Lords as this goes through government. Joe, firstly to you, next to you, I should say. Joe Millis.
Yeah, hi, Joe Millis, still Bromley Reform. Since this is the Home Secretary's, I think, her major bill going through Parliament at the moment, wouldn't it be better if the board is so against it, which I take it is, and praise everybody involved in this, wouldn't it be better to be less effusive in our praise of Priti Patel and perhaps distance ourselves slightly from her and her actions, because this is all her idea. And it just doesn't square with me that we can be critical of the bill, yet the person who is behind this bill receives our praise almost unconditionally. Thank you.
Well, I think I just responded on that, in that we're tackling, we tackle the issue as it comes up. So we play the ball, not the man, when we're discussing the issues. Denise.
Thank you, Amanda. Denise Lester, Southampton United Synagogue. It's a point of information, really, and I actually apologise for not communicating it by email earlier. The board's response makes reference to the Law Society's response. For those deputies who don't know, I sit on the Law Society Council, which is the government's body for over 140,000 solicitors. I did communicate it to the president of the Law Society and the director of communications. Their view was that it was a genuine compliment to the Law Society, and the board has a long and proud tradition of supporting refugees. I say that as an example of our reach. I make the other comment that obviously we work with the government of the day, and the Conservative Party have unequivocally been supportive to us as a community, and we must be mindful of that, and we are mindful of that in our relations with the Home Secretary, Legal Counsel, etc. But I just wanted to feed back that positive report to the honorary officers and the board. Thank you. And the Law Society remit includes working with the public in the public interest as well. So there's dovetailing there. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Paul Hart.
Hi, Amanda. First of all, thank you for all the emails you've been sending me.
Sorry, is there another microphone on somewhere?
Yes, my wife, Ruth.
So perhaps you could go on mute while you're talking.
Yes, she has. I mentioned to you about the Uyghur situation a few months ago, and you told me that you're in conversation with the Uyghurs in the UK. Is there any update to that situation now?
I'm going to, if that's all right, I'm going to ask David Mendoza-Wolfson to pick up the response on the Uyghurs, because it's one of those issues that sort of spans across several divisions, and we've decided as honorary officers that David will lead on the Uyghur campaign.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Lead Walkin. Good morning. Good to see you.
Hello, Lead Walkin, Maidenhead Reform Synagogue. I have a question on the religious freedoms section of your report, particularly on shechita. I'm a vegetarian, have been all of my life. So I fully support animal welfare measures, I should say. But I'm also the deputy for Maidenhead Synagogue, so I also support religious freedoms and the ability to practice shechita, even though it doesn't apply to me personally. Now, I did ask a question of the president, and the answer came back as, we're using the Shechita UK recommendation. But I've read that, and my impression of it is it says Shechita good, stunning bad, which I think is a little disingenuous in some ways. And I'm just wondering if the board would consider a more nuanced approach where both the welfare of animals and the ability to practice Shechita could work side by side. I do have some ideas on that, and I'd be happy to share them with you, Amanda, but it just seems like we're a little bit too far towards the being very defensive about Shechita without also considering animal rights. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee, and I appreciate your input. And yes, let's take it offline. And I'm very interested to hear your perspective, and we can look at that. Board of Deputies is a stakeholder in Shechita UK, and Shechita UK does lead for the Jewish community, and so their response included our input, and we did, as Marie's answer suggests, and as I've got in my report, we did write a letter of support for their submission. Of course, it's not quite as simple as one side good, the other side bad, and it is nuanced. I think in the context of a consultation response, one needs to be clear and concise in how one puts one's views over. And when you get down into the nitty-gritty detail of actually what happens when an animal is stunned, and what the alternatives are, and what happens when an animal is slaughtered using the Jewish methods, the religious methods, that it just is something that one talks about in a conversation and doesn't put into a consultation response. So let's take it offline, and yes, absolutely happy to talk and see where we end up. Thank you. Simon Gordon, hi.
Hello, Amanda. It's me that's been unmuted, not Simon.
Oh, beg your pardon. Hi, Carol.
So, hello. Yeah, Carol Abrahams, Captain Bromley Synagogue. Just a very quick mention on Shechita. When there are debates on this, as there are in the House of Commons, House of Lords from time to time, the term ritual slaughter is used. And I think we have got to absolutely try and get rid of that term. It's an appalling term. It's not ritual slaughter. Shechita is not ritual slaughter. It's religious method of slaughter. And ritual slaughter has appalling connotations. So please, can we make sure that anything we do tries to get rid of that term being used?
I'll certainly look into that. Thanks, Carol. We have 2 minutes left, and so I'm conscious of the fact that there are 3 more people to speak. Simon, I know you were there first, so hopefully we can hear from you.
Good morning. This is a very quick question. Obviously, we need, as Jews, to fight against the persecution of the Uyghurs. Obviously, we need to fight for the Yazidis and others. I just wonder how we try and separate economic migrants from those who are coming in, from those who are suffering persecution. We as Jews were persecuted for many years. There were pogroms and various other. My great-grandmother walked here with 2 young children across Poland. So I have the greatest of sympathy, but I just wonder how we deal with all these young single men who seem to appear here, having paid £5,000 or £10,000 to get here. Thank you.
I think it's a very good question. It might be a quick question, but it's not a quick answer. And so I think the reality is that, you know, as we've always said, that anyone that feels the need to leave their homes and their families and everything that they have behind them and get into a rickety boat to come across the channel has the right to be treated with dignity when they arrive, and I think we just need to consider it all. And there are things that we stand up for as Jews, and there are issues around the law, and so we can tackle the bill as it comes through. I'm really, really sorry, Mary and Adrian. I'm conscious of the fact we need to move on. I'm really happy to take your questions either next time in plenary, or please contact me offline and I'll respond.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. And apologies that we can't take all of the questions. A question was asked before about Piers Corbyn, and I have to say that I was very, very concerned about his trying to tell people to march on MPs' offices. I'm happy to be able to report to you, and thank you very much, Simone Class, that he's now been arrested. So no doubt he will now have some explaining to do. Over to you, Ben. Hi, Ben, you're on mute.
I think he's having technical difficulties. So
okay, I tell you what, let's go to David Mendoza-Wolfson then, and we'll come back to Ben. Sorry, everybody, about that. We'll get it resolved. David, would you do your report now, and we'll come back to Ben?
Yeah, sure. Thank you
you
very much. So the report is all there. Like Gary said, it's only really been 4 weeks, but we had some really great events. I think there were the lunches and breakfast from LFI and CFI. We met with the Foreign Secretary, various ambassadors. Unfortunately, I had to isolate for 11 days during this period, but I was really pleased that Ben Crown, that members of staff, that Marie covered for me in a number of meetings over the Hanukkah week and events that I absolutely would have loved to have been able to go to had I been able to. It was a lovely Hanukkah filled with events from all sorts of things, from member organisations like Harif, right through to a dinner with the Deputy Chairman Ambassador. So I'm grateful for everyone who was able to cover for me, though slightly envious during those things. It's probably worth me here talking about the UN vote and statement, just because that was an earlier question. On reflection, I think that maybe our statement was a little overzealous. We were, frankly, very pleased with the result that happened. Getting countries to change their vote is no small ask, and frankly, moving people from yeses to abstains, though not necessarily a response that we always want, is a huge step in the right direction. Moving the dial there means that next time these kinds of votes come up, and unfortunately they will come up as they do year on year on year across the organs of the United Nations, we can say, well, look, you abstained last time, now is time to vote no. And this is the position that we will be taking, that we continue to take as we continue to advocate for a real change in position, not just by the UK, but from all, frankly, free democracies across the world when it comes to these Israel motions. This one itself was all slightly strange. Unlike most motions, it actually did recognize the holy nature of Jerusalem to Jews and Christians as well as Muslims. So clearly some friendly nations did manage to get some stuff in through drafting. However, the continued use of a 2016 motion that went through UNESCO that only refers to the Temple Mount as Haram al-Sharif is very unhelpful. And the American delegates, I think some others brought it up, the right terminology that should be used in international fora are Haram al-Sharif / Temple Mount. and we will be pushing for friendly nations to make sure that that's drafted in to any of these motions that do continue to go forward. So we're working really hard on this. I'm really pleased that we have a working group that will be led by Efrat Sofer that's going to be mapping all of the anti-Israel votes and things like that across the UN system. It's a huge organization. You know, they frankly have these votes on everything from World Health to UN Women to the General Assembly, and we need to combat these across the board. Finally, there was a question on the Uyghurs. A tribunal did show that there is a genocide happening in China to the Uyghur Muslim community, as well as other hideous crimes against humanity. It's an interesting, form of genocide that isn't just genocide internationally. Its definition isn't just the mass slaughter of people, but the fact that they are having forced sterilizations of this community, which means that it won't be able to continue, is a form of genocide under agreed conventions. We continue to work with the World Uyghur Congress to make sure that their plight is heard, and I too was thrilled at the UK's agreement that they would not send diplomats to China for the Olympics, for the Winter Olympics. With that, I will move on to questions, please. I currently don't see any hands up. I see one hand up. Ivan.
Hello, I'm glad to see you back from your 11 days of isolation. And I know you've probably had limited time between the last plenary and this plenary. However, you may recall that David Safir at the last plenary asked a question about the refugees in the area between Poland, Belarus, Latvia, and Lithuania. And I also noticed that in the president's statement, she refers to the issue of refugees in this area to you. I wonder whether you had chance, I guess probably not, but whether you will have chance to have a look at the plight of the refugees in this area. In fact, they've been moved from the area, but they're still in Belarus. And the last number I've heard was something like 5,000. And very briefly, one of the things which wasn't minuted was that, in fact, David also asked the same question about the refugees on the French side of the Channel, who are also under difficult conditions. Over to you.
Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to hand. I really do appreciate the question. I promise I will get you a response on it. I'll speak to staff and make sure that by the next plenary we have an adequate response. Sorry that I don't have a better answer right now, but I figure I'd better to be honest on it. Louise. I'm afraid you're still muted, Louise.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
Yeah.
Yeah, Louise Ellman, Jewish Labour Movement. I just like to ask you a question on the UN resolutions concerning Israel. I actually think you've done pretty well in moving people from opposition to abstain. A lot of these votes are done in a way which isn't known to MPs generally, isn't known to many people. It happens through labyrinths, I would say, where all kinds of detailed conversations and all kinds of committees are going on. My question is, what kind of contact or lobbying is done to MPs in the UK Parliament through the appropriate groups? Because very often votes like this are taken on instructions, maybe of ministers, may not even be ministers, and sometimes not even ministers know what's happening, though they ought to know. And so it's really important that supportive MPs are made aware of these issues so the lobbying can come from them. So I remember cases when I was in Parliament where ministers ministers you thought would be supportive voted in a different way, or their representatives did. And none of this was really known to people on the ground. And when they did know, it made a difference and votes did get changed, even if it was over time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the sausage gets made, right? I mean, when it comes to the UN votes, it is very strange. I remember back when I was working for an NGO in Geneva, when you were in the UN, the countries would literally just go in groups, lock themselves in a room, and they'd come out with a new draft. And you're right, the more people that we lobby on this, the better. We're very strong in our lobbying with the Foreign Office, with the Prime Minister's office, but we should do more to reach out to more MPs on both sides, to make sure that you're right, that these calls are coming from people across the political spectrum at all different levels. You know, it really is shocking. It's appalling that the number of resolutions of all types that go through these bodies. You know, we will have these mapped out, but yeah, we will make sure to increase the work that we do on speaking to MPs of all colours to make sure that the UK is voting the right way on these motions, or at least where that's not possible, not the wrong way. Andrew.
Waiting to be unmuted. Thank you, David. I'm encouraging you to take up with the Eurasian Jewish Congress and also the local ambassadors for Belarus and Ukraine real concerns first on Belarus in terms of the law equating Holocaust with Nazi crimes against nationals. That has been focused a lot by Israeli media today, and means that anyone who suggests that they can have a 5-year or a 10-year prison sentence for claiming a difference between the way Jews were treated and the way other residents of Belarus were treated, and also real concerns about the situation in terms of how it will affect the Jewish community in Ukraine. The British ambassador to Ukraine is a member of Finchley Reform, and we were, and just brief chat with her before our Friday evening service, which she attends. Real concerns, and I perhaps would reach out there and also suggest perhaps that the board sends a letter of concern support in terms of British action to the ambassador and to the Foreign Office in terms of real concerns on what's going on in Ukraine.
Absolutely, thank you, Andrew. I know that this is an issue very close to your heart, and it is one that I'll definitely look more into. When it comes to Belarus, we're dealing with a country that proudly refers to itself as Europe's last dictatorship. As such, we always have to be careful in the way that we deal with them to make sure that anything we do doesn't put Jews in that country at risk. Our first responsibility has to be for the safety of all Jews in the UK and abroad. And we've got to make sure that by sating our consciences, we don't put other people at risk and harm. I absolutely will look into this, but I just wanted to sort of make that clear, that we do have to make sure to be careful when dealing with some of these dictatorships to make sure that people's lives aren't put at risk. Thank you. Martin. You should have been asked to unmute, but I'll make sure that you have been. Not quite there yet. There we go.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you, David. I don't want to reassure Louise Ellman in terms of the delegation to the UN when I was working there 30 years ago, admittedly some history, but we had a parliamentary delegation every year that used to come just after the Foreign Secretary's visit or Prime Minister's visit. And so that's the time, I think. The thing to do is work with the delegation that comes, because a parliamentary delegation comes every year, and tell them which the most egregious resolutions which they should make sure that the Foreign Office votes properly sort of against. I think it's also relevant to the various other groups that come, and it's also relevant to the other issues that are going to come up. I'm very happy to be taking part in your working group on the UN, and I can assure you that I will have what I can do to try and make sure that you work on the right people. And so there should be more votes, more successes like you had already. Thank you. Bye.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Martin. I guess all I'll really say is how thrilled we are to have you helping us. For those that don't know, Martin worked at the then FCO for a great many years and has a lot of experience and expertise in this area. So really pleased that he is coming along to our meetings and engaging in this working group. So thank you. I don't see any other hands up, and so I'll hand back over to you, Marie.
Thank you, very appreciated. Could I just remind deputies, when you speak, could you please give your name and constituencies? It's important also for writing up of the minutes, so it'd be really appreciated. Can I just come back on one point about Shahita, just to clarify that our references to Shahita for outside audiences do always refer to this as religious slaughter, because this is in line with the recommendation from Shahita UK. And of course, the ability to perform Shahita is fundamental to the Jewish way of life. And we are fortunate indeed to live in a country where it's not under direct threat, but there has, of course, been quite a bit of opposition to this in mainland European and indeed Nordic countries where there are no Jews. And we can send to deputies if they want Shahita's UK guidance. So just wanted to come back on that one slightly. Could I now please introduce Ben Crown, who is our Treasurer and Chair of the Finance and Organisation Division. Over to you, Ben.
Thanks very much, Marie. We'll call this take two. Morning, everyone. It's lovely to be here. Afternoon, I should say now. It's lovely to be here. Obviously, deputies have already seen my report. There is just a couple of things to follow up from that, and then one other point as well. First of all, just a brief update on our finances. Like I said, with apologies, I did not have and still don't have management accounts for November due to the transitioning of staff. We have a brand new finance officer in Martin who is shaping up very well, but is just taking a little bit longer than his routine to generate the management accounts. So hopefully we'll be back on schedule in January on that. The headline numbers are that we've picked up, thanks very much, the efforts of various deputies and to Brian and his team. The common contribution, the variance there is a little bit lower. It's still slightly below what was a pretty aggressive budget for the year, but it's shaping up nicely. Overall, we dipped into an operating deficit in November, which I expect to continue in December as budgeted, though we should hopefully end the year a little bit above, a little bit more favourable than the overall budget operating deficit, about £50,000 or £60,000. And then over and above that, of course, we have the investment portfolio and the gains there, which continues to do very nicely. So hopefully in the January meeting, there'll be a full retrospective for the year, and I'll add in some more detailed comments at that point. Obviously, we continue to have both cost savings and I would say the right shifting, delaying of donations tied to specific activities because of the things we've just not been able to do this year, or projects have moved back for whatever reason. But overall, it looks like we're going to end the year just about ahead of our overall budget, which in a challenging year for everyone is something to be quite pleased with. The second point to make, and I spent almost the whole of the second page of my report on this, it is communal contribution season. It is shul bill season. This is the time for deputies who once a year or a couple of times a year highlight the work of the board to do it at this point. Put it in newsletters. If you can get a dedicated email to the community, then that's fabulous as well. As I sort of mentioned in my report, just a couple of hygiene points. Could all deputies please make sure if there are shul members, that their shul is putting the common contribution on the bill. Every synagogue who sends a deputy to the board undertakes to do this. I know not everyone does. We will be following up. The F&O and the finance team will be following up before the end of the year with deputies whose shuls have historically not paid through the common contribution, just to check it's going on the bill this year. If it is on the shul bill, it should be there at £30, which has been the rate for a number of years now. And if there is any special narrative, or if there is, or if it's presented in a slightly odd way, then just flag this up to us. Obviously, both the F&O and the finance team are happy to support individual deputies following up with their shuls if there are issues. I should say the large majority of shuls do put the common contribution in their bill, the large majority of schools are paying through in a timely manner. Often, even when if schools aren't, they're usually very receptive to individual deputies following up on this and giving us a little bit of a chase. So I think that's a lot of the work we do in the second half of the year, just seeing where things are. So we're grateful to deputies who are engaged in that, and we will be asking people to help out a little bit more there. I guess I should also say, again, it's in my report, hybrid plenaries. We've booked a venue for January. At this point, it looks somewhat unlikely that we will be able to meet in person, even in a smaller number. But we will take a view in early January after we've got through the holiday season, after we know what the government guidance is likely to be, and we will let people know. Having said those things with my F&O hat, also, I think as deputies know, although I'm the deputy at the moment for Bevis Marks, was previously deputy for Limud, I'm a trustee of Limud. I will therefore, acknowledging the slight conflict, I will follow up on the question earlier about the board's Limud program. We will be taking, I think, 11 sessions to Limud this year. Marie will be speaking, Gary will be speaking, David will be speaking. I will be speaking not with a board hat. Michael will be speaking. We hope to have Michael and or Marie in conversation with a senior Israeli government official, TBC. We hope to have Marie in conversation with a senior government minister, TBC. We will have David in conversation with Hillel Neuer, who is the chair of UN Watch. They'll be having conversations following up on some of the stuff which has been discussed recently about the UN and resolutions and monitoring and so forth. There will be a session by Stephen Bush talking about the Racial Inclusion Commission, which the board did earlier in the year, and the follow-up on what's been done on that since. And then there will be a range of other questions. I should highlight, of course, that there's a wide program of many events other deputies are presenting. We hope to have a full list of board sessions going out on Monday. If any deputies are presenting want their sessions to go into that as well, then just send them on to Lauren and she will include them too. And yes, if people haven't booked for Limud, my understanding is they're still taking bookings, and obviously the board will be there in force, and we hope to see a lot of you there too. Pending demand, we will do some sort of breakout social event as well for deputies who are there, and we'll try and get details in that either tomorrow or later in the week. I will now pause and take some questions. Susan Pascoe.
Susan, you're on mute.
Thank you. So it wouldn't let me unmute. Susan Pascoe, Israel Community. I thank you, Ben, and all your committee for all your hard work and all your dedication. But I just wanted to point out the terminology you used in your written report and in what you said today. So the term bill and invoice, which you also use in your written report, is very problematic from an HMRC perspective, because if schools want to claim gift aid and if members want to pay their membership by charity checks, then they cannot be bills. They have to be statements, membership statements. So unless you want to trigger an HMRC investigation into schools, I would urge you please to use the word school membership statements instead. Thank you.
That's fine, Susan. I'll use that going forward. I mean, I think we all use the various bits of language at various points, but I'll make sure that going forward we call them membership statements. Is there anything else from anyone? I can see someone has put in a cup of tea or cup of coffee icon. I'm not sure if that's a question. Flora, please.
It's unmuting. Right, thank you, good morning. Thank you very much, Ben. This is not a question again, well, this is a question. I'm wondering how many of us who represent charities and organisations, and I'm one such person, British Emuna. How many of us go back to our organisation? I know I didn't do it in the beginning, and I suddenly thought, no, I should let them know, because they're all members of shuls or whatever. And how many of us do actually ask our constituencies, if I could use that word, to also encourage them also to pay the levy? I mean, is that a thought? Is this something just... I should imagine that many of us don't. I should imagine many of us don't, because we don't represent a shul.
Yeah, so I should say, so I guess a question, 2 parts, which I'll take in 2 parts. Part the first, yes, any deputy, even if they're not specifically the deputy for a shul, this is the time of year to send out, if you can, sort of a month, you know, an update on the board's work. This is the time to make sure the common briefing and other materials are included in mail outs and so forth. The point is to create visibility to everyone on sort of the mailing list, subscription list, so that when the shul membership invoice membership statement comes in, even if it's not associated with your specific organization, nevertheless it's in people's minds to pay. The F&O will be following up in 2022. We do want to do more with organizations. We're blessed to have a lot of organizations, and we know the trend in the community overall is towards people being involved in an organization without necessarily being a shul member. That is something that's on our mind. It has to be done in a thoughtful and tactful way. We don't want organizations to feel that we are cannibalizing their donor base, but that's sort of a priority which we'll be taking forward in 2022. So watch this space, and I hope to have more of the deputies in the new year. I'll take Dory and then John, and then I think we'll run out of time.
Thank you, Ben. Just on the question of the contribution and what to call them, in our shul, the community contribution for the Board of Deputies just appears on the bill. So without complicating the administration, what can we call it so that we know we can make a separate payment? Because the shul basically takes the payment and then passes it on to the board. So what's your suggestion that we can make make it illegal to use charity payments?
I know, so I think if there's some question about the detail, then I'm happy to follow up that separately. I think most shuls either have a single number and then they say what goes into it as a breakdown, but the community contribution is part of that, or there is some sort of table and then everything is individual itemized, and then there's a total at the bottom, and those are both great. Those are fine. What we sometimes see, for example, is that there is a subtotal for everything synagogue related, and then underneath that there is the common contribution, and then there is a final total, and it's sort of just a slight nudge to people that, oh well, this thing is more optional than all the other items on it, and sometimes obviously there are other things which are added on as well, which might have a supporting narrative. And we would hope that the communal contribution would also have a supporting narrative in the same way. So if people think there is anything unusual or non-standard in these statements, then send them on, and we can say, well, no, this is great, this is fine, we're happy. Or otherwise, we can follow up with the shul office and say, when you're sending out these statements next year, would you mind doing sort of X, Y, Z? Obviously, we're dealing with a lot of different communities. Everyone does it slightly differently. And we just want to do it in a way which sort of maximizes the amount that we raise without making life difficult for anyone else. John. And then I think if we're very quick, we can put in Adrian as well.
Thanks, Ben. John Melchior, Hadleywood Jewish Community. Just a very quick question. I'm a relatively new deputy, and I don't know how big a proportion of the optional levies for BOD actually is paid. Is that something you can tell us? How many of the different shuls or total number of potential membership optional fees are coming in terms of proportion? And is it possible, without breaking sort of individual GDPR rules, etc., to tell us, those of us who are representing a specific shul, to tell us the proportion of fees we're getting from that shul, or how many? Then I'll work out the proportion if you tell me how many comes in from my shul, and that way I can do some work in terms of increasing the number of people paying by doing better briefings. etc. But I don't have any of that knowledge, and I don't know overall how much you're getting in and how many people are actually paying the optional fee.
Thanks, John. That's a very good question. I think what we'll do is, I'm not sure if we'll get it done this side of the end of December, but certainly in January, we can send every deputy who represents a synagogue sort of a, like I said, maybe not the split numbers, but sort of a general sense of, well, you know, because we don't get a number of individuals, we just get a lump sum from a synagogue. So we sort of take that and divide it by 30, and that's our best guess as to how many people are actually paying. So we can give sort of a rough idea of what that number is and where it sits relative to sort of the sort of other people who are paying in. That we have, I think, 135 synagogues represented on the board. More than 100, I would say certainly more than 100 of them are regular payers of the common contribution at a non-desultory amount, and there are, you know, and there's no real relationship in terms of size, in terms of location. There are small regional communities who you know, where almost everyone pays. There are large central London communities where almost everyone pays, and then there are places down the road where we get, you know, sort of diddly squat. So I think, you know, there's always the challenge is getting the maximum amount of milk for the minimum amount of moo. The best way to approach an individual community may very well be through the deputies. I'm very appreciative of, obviously, Robert Stone earlier talked about an effort they're making to gather in more. Other communities I know and other deputies are already engaged in that sort of thing. And we'll play it by ear on a case-by-case basis. Like I said, the board has infrastructure both on the professional side and the lay side to support deputies to help people to help us. I wonder if I know I'm 2 minutes over. Can I take Adrian and Eleanor's questions very quickly, and then I will answer them very quickly because I know that Adam is keen to speak.
Hi, thank you. Adrian Cohn, Highgate United Synagogue. I think all United Synagogues bill in the same way, in that it's a pro forma invoice because it's done centrally. So it's split 3 ways, which is fees for the shul, and then fees for the burial society, and then the levy for the Board of Deputies. And as I understand, what I've always personally done is I've been able to pay with a charity voucher for both the shul fees and the board levy, but the burial society you have to pay. You can't use a charity voucher because it's not charitable because of the personal benefit that you have in it. That's my understanding. But obviously, a lot of people are not alive to that and just pay the whole lump sum and don't claim the charitable relief. Anyway, that's my understanding.
Thanks, Adrian. I'll just flag that to people and I'll pass to Eleanor very quickly.
Thank you. Eleanor Lind, New London Synagogue. I think one has to appreciate that there are a considerable number of Jewish people who, like me, belong to more than one synagogue. And of course, we only pay once to the board. Did you?
Yeah,
yes.
It's a reasonable point, Eleanor. I think we'll take it on board. I think, you know, as and when whatever we send out needs to be taken with, you know, a pinch of salt and an expectation that is somewhat approximate. I should say that sort of overall, and I will leave it here, the common contribution brings in between £600,000 and £700,000 a year, assuming that it's being paid at the £30 rate and no one is paying anything less. That means that about 20 or 25,000 people are paying to support the board. I think it really is a testament to our representative nature, to the base of support we have sort of across the community. And that's why it's so important not just to have the cash. Obviously, the cash is very helpful, but it's so, you know, when Marie goes into a meeting, when Gary goes into a meeting, when Dave goes into a meeting, and people say, well, who is the Board of Deputies? To be able to say we are funded by, you know, we are a grassroots organization funded by 25,000 Jews across the country. That really shows that, you know, we're not just You know, we're not just a fax machine and a letterhead. We really do speak for a lot of people, and it helps us in our lobbying and advocacy work. So yes, I'll close by just encouraging people once more: push a little bit with your shuls, push a little bit more with your organizations, and we're here to give support. And I see even during this meeting, some emails have gone out and come in on that. So thank you in advance for your help.
And thank you very much for that. And I do want to thank all of you deputies that do go back to your shores and do tell them and your organisations about the work of the board. I've tried to travel to as many shores for Shabbats, and I've had some fantastic Shabbats recently with Richard Cohen and Darish Metterling, and I'm very, very happy to come to your communities. And if anyone wants to pay above the communal contribution, you are of course welcome to do so. All donations are very, very welcome. And you never know when you come back to the board. So now I'd like to very much introduce Adam Dawson. He has for many years been a deputy. So thank you very much, Adam, for all of your work. He's also done a lot of other fantastic work for the community, especially in the education sector. And he's now going to present to us for Jamie for Mental Health Shabbat. So I'd really be grateful if you would give him your attention. And over to you, Adam. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. It's a great pleasure to join you today. And thank you to Vice President Gary Mond and to Andrew Gilbert for the invite. I have to say, Maria, as you mentioned, it's not my first board meeting, but certainly in joining you by Zoom, you'll forgive me thinking back to 1994 when I did join the board first time as a deputy, and I'd have to get up at 5:30 in the morning on the day of the plenary to come down from Sheffield with my late father, who was also the deputy for Sheffield. If we were on the road by 6, we usually stood a good chance of being in Waverton House by 10. But I can reliably inform you today, I left the kitchen about 15 seconds ago and no trouble parking at all. And I also wondered when I was thinking about coming today, and with no disrespect to your illustrious former presidents, and I can see a number of those who've served over the last 25 or 27 years since I was here, that whether in 1994 or even indeed in 2004, possibly in 2014, where the precious time at a plenary session would have been allotted to the subject of mental illness and mental health. But today it has been, and I'm very grateful, and as Chair of Jamie, delighted to address you. So in the few minutes I have, I'd like to say a little bit about Jamie and then specifically talk about our upcoming Mental Health Shabbat. Jamie, for those who don't know, is the community's mental health service, and our stated aims are to enrich and save lives of those impacted by mental illness. At any one time, we are supporting around 1,400 individuals, and over the course of a year, we'll deliver somewhere in the region of 50,000 separate service interventions. And they can be anything from vocational support, advocacy, our Compare friending program, care and family support, hospital visits, and many more services that our wonderful team do. In the last 6 months, we've undertaken a significant strategic review of our work. We've always been up until now an adult service, but over in January next year, at the start of the new year, we'll be piloting a mental health service for young people of secondary school age, an area where there has been a gap in provision, and we very much hope we'll be able to support the work that's been doing and also provide a much needed service for young people in the community. We're also committed, as part of our review, to working towards a 24/7 service, to increase our campaigning, our education and our suicide prevention programme, and to make affordable to all of those who need it one-to-one counselling. Hopefully some of you will see us more on your high street as we develop our headroom cafes and integrated Jamie hubs in order that we can create a really safe, non-stigmatizing environment for those who need it. Every January, coinciding purposefully with Parshat Bo, we hold our Mental Health Shabbat. Bo, as many of you will know, tells a story of the plague of darkness. And if you look at the commentary, it talks about how the Egyptians were physically and mentally restricted due to the immense darkness that was brought upon them. And this, of course, sadly for many, has much resonance with mental illness. This year, Mental Health Shabbat falls on the 7th and 8th of January, so just in a few weeks' time. And our theme is mental health in a changing world. I hate to say the word, but living through the pandemic has affected all of our mental health. And this special Shabbat will be a real opportunity for the entire community, hopefully, to come together and focus to raise awareness of mental health and well-being. So in January this year, January 21, we had over 200 organisations and community mark Mental Health Shabbat. We had events occurring across the community, panel discussions. The board, I think, did a podcast featuring our fantastic CEO, Laurie Rackind, and we had a lot of online programming featuring a host of well-known community names and service users talking about mental illness and recovery. Myself and fellow trustees spoke in a number of shuls and community centres and created a real sense of community, opening, hopefully, a number of people's eyes to what is still to some a taboo subject. So moving forward to this year, our wonderful team at Jamie have produced a mental health Shabbat toolkit, which provides information and resources. I will make sure, I think already we've sent something to the board, but I'll make sure that those who need to have it at the board so you can access it. I really would encourage you all, when you go back to your organisations and communities today, as well as communal levy, pleased to say that we still bang on for the support the communal levy, that you go back and tell them about Mental Health Shabbat. I very much hope that your communities know about it, but if they don't, please be that ambassador and take the message back. And to answer the very simple question, what can I do? The toolkit will set out, we've got a number of activities, a number of suggestions in terms of discussions. We encourage Rabbanim across the community to use the pulpit on Shabbat bar to talk about mental illness, to talk about mental health, and to try and destigmatize that. So please get in touch with Jamie, have a look and speak to those. I appreciate it may be you, it may be other people from your organizations or communities, but please talk to our team. We have a team dedicated to support the Mental Health Shabbat, and hopefully your community will get involved. I and many of my colleagues and many of my trustees are very happy to appear. It's a bit easier these days by Zoom, unfortunately, but to be able to actually go around and speak to a number of communities over the course of the week. But if you would like to invite me or any of my colleagues, we'd be delighted to appear and talk a little bit more detail about mental illness, mental health, and how hopefully together we can improve things for the community. So thank you for the time this morning. And just to say that in these dark and no doubt difficult days amidst the middle of the pandemic that we come up, my simple message, apart from support Mental Health Shabbat, is to look after yourselves, look out for each other, phone a friend, a family member, or a member of your community and ask how they are. And I know that I'm speaking to the leadership of the community here, but you're not invincible. We all have difficult days. Joe Root will probably tell you about how you can be at the top of your game and have a difficult day. But please, in the weeks and months ahead, make sure to look after your own mental health. And finally, please remember that Jamie are there to support you. We will do what we can and would be delighted is perhaps often the wrong word for you to be in touch, but we'd much prefer you came and talked to us than didn't talk to anybody at all. So, Madam President, thank you for your invite. I'm certainly happy. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I hope to see all of you again very soon, either like this or preferably in person. But thanks for the time this morning, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and address you all.
Oh, thank you, Adam, and thank you for all of your work. I can see quite a few people giving you a clap. Please feel free, deputies, because do you know what? We don't often show as much appreciation for people that volunteer in their free time. And you know what? We are all volunteers. So thank you. Thank you for that, and good luck, and let us know how it goes and whatever else we can do. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Oh, look, you've even got a love heart from Roy Lewis from Sheffield. There
Well,
we are.
I was going to say, I don't know if I was able to say, but to say a special hello to Roy.
No, thank you. There's nothing wrong with showing a bit of love, deputies, because we often forget what a wonderful community we are, and we are really like a family, and I think that's really, really important. I want to thank everybody for today. It's really good to be able to listen and hear everybody's views. And there have been some very, very serious incidents recently, the issue on the bus, and we know that we are dealing with those issues. We've got concern today about the article in the Sunday Times, but I just want to say again that we are, in my view, very, very lucky to be living in the UK. We're lucky to be here. It's a great place to live for Jewish people. When I speak to my counterpart, for example, in France, I feel it's quite heartbreaking, and I really do realise how lucky we are here. And we had a fantastic Hanukkah in the square. We were able to have our menorah shining light. The Mayor Sadiq Khan with us, and we've got to look at all the positives that we have. So I hope you can all have a very good few weeks. We'll put out various updates for you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for joining us and giving us your time today, and we look forward to seeing you very soon. If everyone wants to unmute and give a wave, you're very, very welcome. So thank you, and see you soon.